Okay, so this is a vlog video where I just kind of turn on the camera and ramble about a specific subject. The subject in this case is a new project I want to experiment with on this YouTube channel. It's going to be maybe a combination of a couple different things I've already been doing. I'm going to assume that people watching this video might not have seen any of my other videos because that's just the way YouTube works sometimes, huh? What I've been doing, I started doing this channel a couple years ago, and initially I was just using it to review books and movies I saw as kind of a supplement to the reviews I was already writing on the blog, just kind of experiment with a different medium. Since then, I've kind of gotten sucked into it more and more and been kind of intrigued by the reach of the platform and have just kind of started experimenting with a lot of different things on it, such as like vlogs like this one where I just turn on the camera and ramble. But another thing I've started doing is creating listening materials, primarily aimed at my students. So my day job is I teach English. I live in Vietnam at the moment. I've been living the last 20 years or so in several different countries. I've often kind of have students come up to me and ask me for more listening practice. And I know there's a million things out there in this day and age. But I don't actually know what's out there and what's not. Because, as a teacher, you have experiences with resources that you use in the classroom, but you don't have like a range of experience with self-study materials. Which is why I think it's always a bad idea to ask your English teacher, what can you do to study English outside of class? Chances are your English teacher doesn't know. That's a digression. Sorry. Been thinking for a long time about creating my own materials, both because it would be useful to give out to the students in cases where they ask for stuff, and just because I wanted to try my hand at it, when you've been teaching English for a long time, one of the next career moves could be material creation. So I thought, give this a try and see how it goes. Now, the thing about English listening materials is the difficulty can range. So, for example, you can have some very easy graded materials for low-level students, but you can also have some very difficult materials for higher-level students that's kind of approximating authentic material, or is authentic material. Now, the first thing I did when I got this idea is I just went through my archives of all the old texts that I've used for reading lessons, and I just made listening videos out of them. Now, some of these texts were for higher level students, and to be quite honest, some of these texts were I used them for higher level students, and they may have been even a little bit too challenging for the higher level students. Some kind of authentic materials or selections from novels or stuff like that. But that is part of what we try and do as English teachers, is to kind of guide higher level students or even intermediate students into authentic material. So I went through kind of all the stuff in my archives, and then since then I've been trying to create some of the stuff of my own. Grimm Brothers fairy tales and Aesop's fairy tales, which I've been rewriting myself to try and make it more understandable toward about a pre-intermediate student level. Anyways, ever since I started doing this, something that's been in the back of my mind is, what about my old stories? All the stuff that I've written all over the years. Could I make a listening video out of that? And on any kind of objective measurement, the smart answer is probably not. because the stuff I've written is not equal in quality to the other material out there. And yet, it's a self-indulgence that seemed very appealing to me because, I have a certain fondness for my materials. Even stories I wrote as a kid, even though I know exactly where the problems are, or I know kind of exactly what the limitations of them are, they remind me of kind of the fun I had creating it. Also, I think kind of maybe any writer can identify with this. You have this world in your head which seems very vivid to you. Now, when you try to convert that into the printed paper to present to somebody else, we have limited success with that. And sometimes what's very vivid in your head doesn't translate well on paper if you're a writer of limited talent. So it's of limited interest to other people, but it's still, you yourself still have fondness for that because you know the world that you wanted to create. You can still see these pictures vividly in your head, even years later when you go back to old stuff you've written. So for that reason, I'm quite fond of my old stories, even though I know they're incredibly flawed. And it would just be something fun for me to do. Now, how much self-indulgence can you get away with? Just because this is fun for me to do, does that justify me putting it up onto YouTube? And after going back and forth on this for some time, I've come around to the idea of, yeah, why not? I'll just be kind of self-indulgent. I mean, with the amount of views this channel gets, a typical video will get like 2 views. It doesn't really matter anyways. I mean, maybe it matters to YouTube because I'm taking up their space. But there's no point in agonizing over this too much because it's just going to go out into the void and nobody will watch it and it won't particularly hurt anyone. And if somebody does watch it and they find it to be useful, or if it's useful for somebody, great. Chances are nobody will watch it, and I kind of know that going in, but it'll be an exercise in nostalgia for me to go through some of this stuff. So I'm going to do what I typically do, which is to create a written form of it, link in the video to the Google Docs where the text will be. The idea is that I'll read out the text into the camera. An ESL student, if they are so interested and they find this, would be able to practice listening first and then checking with the written text to see how much they got right. Depending on time, the stuff that I've been spending a lot of time on, kind of the stuff that I actually print out and give to the students as opposed to just dumping on YouTube, the Aesop's Fables and the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, I create, I go through and I pick out all the words kind of that are not in the elementary word list, create a Quizlet for that, create questions for it. Now I'm not gonna, that all creates a lot of time and effort. I'm not gonna do that for stuff that I know that nobody's using. Or at least I'm not gonna prioritize doing it. I might slowly try and create extra materials for some of this stuff. But yeah, more or less, I'll just be doing kind of one reading and then moving on to the next. Jumping back to a justification of why I'm doing this. Another thing that I've been noticing is channel, I tend to pick up a couple new subscribers every month. So, which I guess is what you do at YouTube. And the thought has occurred to me, if I'm ever going to do something like this, might as well do it now, rather than kind of in 5 years when I might potentially have a lot more subscribers on this channel. You know, get the self-indulgent stuff out of the way where you're still a small and new channel. Yeah, so that's the justification. That's what I'm going to be doing. And by all means, nobody feel obligated to watch these. Okay, a little bit more detail here. I've got my kind of stories divided up into 3 parts. There's stuff I wrote as a kid, which is kind of a bunch of short stories, ranging kind of all the way from like 5 years old to, I don't know, about 12 years old. Then there's this long, convoluted fantasy story that I wrote through high school, somewhat on and off. That's kind of actually 3 or 4 different stories, but they're all kind of interconnected. So it's kind of maybe one long story, kind of. And this, yeah, that one I'll do, that will drag on forever, but I'll do it in chapters. And then there's another one that I started when I was about 21 or 22, worked on for about 1.5 years, and then gave up on. And then came back to when I was in my late 20s and started over and did a second draft when I kind of rewrote most of it. I never actually finished that one, but I'll record what I've got as listenings. So this is where it's going to intersect with vlogging a little bit. I'll put these on the channel as story time listenings for ESL students. But I'll be running kind of a concurrent series in which I'll kind of vlog about it and talk about why I wrote these stories and kind of what I was hoping to do, or just kind of the experience or whatever. Which, again, is a very self-indulgent thing to do, but it's interesting for me. I thought initially, you know, especially for like that story I wrote when I was in my 20s, trying to get out in front of it, you know, saying, okay, look, I know this part was stupid. I know this character totally didn't work. I know this part was bad. I know this part is bad. So I'm going to say it first so nobody can make fun of it. But I thought it would be more interesting to present the story first, just put it out there and see what was the reaction. And then, yeah, I mean, likely as not the reaction will be nil. Again, a lot of these videos on this channel get 0 views or 1 view. But, you know, you never know. And then once it's all out there, then kind of make the video afterwards, trying to kind of explain what I wanted to do with it, what I was trying to do with it, what I realize the shortcomings of it are. So I think that's particularly an issue with the kind of longer stuff I was writing when I got older, but I'll just follow that same format throughout. So I'll do all the kind of childhood stories I wrote first, then I'll make a vlog kind of going over and talking about them. Then I'll do that kind of long, convoluted fantasy story I wrote in high school. Actually, that one I can divide into maybe 3 segments. So I'll do kind of, they're all interconnected stories, but there are 3 separate stories. So I'll do the first one, then I'll make a vlog on that, then I'll do the second one, then I'll make a vlog on that, then I'll do the third one, then I'll make a vlog on that. And then I'll do the one I wrote in my 20s, which I didn't actually finish. I got further along in the first draft than the second draft, because the second draft was just kind of reworking a lot of the first draft, and I never made it as far as I did. They both have their flaws, but in the second draft I was able to clean up some of the flaws in the first draft. So I'll read the second draft version. I can't switch back and forth between drafts because some of the characters go in different directions and some subplots got changed and, you know, kind of stuff like that. So they're not completely interchangeable. So I'll do the second draft version, and then I'll talk about that when I'm done with it. Yeah, that one is, well, yeah, it was completely a failure, and that will become evident when I go through it. But it maintains some interest for me, just because, well, yeah, because of course it does, right? Because I was writing about themes and events and things like that I was interested about. It was completely self-indulgent in that way. Yeah, so that's what's going to be coming on down the pipeline. And this will take me some time to work through, and kind of, as always, I've got a million other things going on in my life, so you know, if I might, more likely than not, it won't be posted quite regularly. There will be, I'll post it when I've got the time to get around to it. Okay, so yes, I'll finish here. That's my plan.